They say we're loud, opinionated, afraid, telling us to hush, dim our historical light. But darlings, we're the heartbeat, sharp and keen, unveiling the truth behind the silver screen.
History harpies hear us roar. Through the ages we explore. Fashion, film, and TV's lore. Spilling tea, wanting more.
I'm Lauren. And I'm Christine. And this is episode 16, maybe, Lauren?
It is hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. And it might be 17. We've been doing them for so long, I just have lost track.
We were reminded not too long ago that it will be our History Harpy anniversary in March.
That is so exciting. I'm really looking forward to it.
And it is truly amazing that the two of us have gotten our act together to come and record this on a pretty regular basis. And it's our dedication and our commitment to these texts and to our listeners.
To
all
listeners.
10 of you.
All 10 of you. We love you.
And we love you. And thank you for encouraging us and for listening and for your feedback and for telling us to keep on keeping on.
We need to do that thing where we do the like and subscribe.
Oh,
right?
yes.
We need to have an email address. Before next time, I'm going to create a History Harpies email address where people can write to us and tell us things and whatever.
You mean besides the actual texts we get from our friends that are like, love the episode. Why didn't you like this movie?
Exactly that.
Okay.
That. But I'm just, before we move on, I'm just going to say we should congratulate ourselves because we managed to do this despite the fact that we are both working mothers. And oddly enough, we get this done.
We are working mothers. We are full-time employees. And I am a semi-professional tennis player.
Which I am not.
Somehow the pod has emerged among all these things. But here's the thing, right? We just love watching our TV and our movies. So shoving a microphone in front of us, it's just not a big step.
It's not a big step. But this is actually a perfect segue.
Yes.
Because today we're going to be talking about texts, about the movies.
Yes.
And about the beauty that is Hollywood.
Yes.
And so actually, first I want to ask you a short question, which is, why do you love movies?
Oh. Okay. Movies in bed or movies in the theater?
Movies in the theater, let's say.
Okay.
Or either one. Why do you just love the thing that is film?
Oh, man. Okay. So I love the thing that is film. Okay. I will be cheesy and cliche for my movie answer by saying in the Nicole AMC ad, right? I am truly transported to another place. I am able to get into the mind and experience of another person and another lifestyle or just the beauty of it. Even some films have very little story at all, but they're just so beautiful, or the music is so amazing. And the theatrics of it all for me are what draws me to the movies. And as you know, and as hopefully our listeners know, I like all kinds of movies and I don't have even a preferred genre. But I love a good story and I can easily be swept away. I just saw Wicked Part 2 and I was
Good for you.
I was swept away for the better.
Glad to hear it.
And so and again, seeing Wicked reminded me of why I love movies and why I've loved them as a kid and really bemoan the end of in-person movies.
Agreed.
How about you, Christine?
I would say all of the above, except for the fondness for Wicked, of course. All of the above, and I would add, I think, exactly that. I love the idea, even though I don't really do it too much anymore, but I love the idea of when you are in a movie theater with a packed house, right? Like when I was younger and used to go to Friday night movies, right? The sort of first night that something was out, seeing something in a sellout theater.
Sure. The summer blockbuster.
The summer blockbusters. I love that sense of community. Yeah. I love, again, with all of these strangers, everyone having this experience together, even when people are sort of shouting things out at the screen. Of course, as you know, both of us have seen Rocky Horror Picture Show so many times.
Yes.
And I love that, but it's exactly everything you said, the idea of being transported, the marriage of kind of the technicality of filmmaking with the artistic component of it, everything coming together. And I really love the idea that it's such a recent art form and something that is fairly new, but really just absolutely became something so magical and magisterial so quickly.
Yes.
And I think that that's really impressive, right? If we look at human history, which both of us do all of the time.
And one of the interesting statistics that I always tell my students in my pop culture class is that even in the darkest days of the Depression in U.S. history, people went to the movies. They spent their last pennies going to the movies, and theater attendance did not decline the way that studio owners had anticipated. I mean, it did decline, but it didn't plummet. It didn't put the movies out of business. And then there was a theater building bonanza during the 1930s, during the sort of New Deal era. So not to get too professory, but it shows us that it really is an American pastime. I mean, it's an international pastime, but that, again, the art form hasn't been with us for that long, and it's something that has its own story to it, which is a segue to our industry films.
Very nice.
So we have 3 texts today, 2 films, The Player and Jay Kelly, which is a brand new film. Last night,
dropped on Netflix.
Although I think it was in theaters before. And The Studio, which is an Apple television series starring Seth Rogen, which the titular
studio head of the mythical Continental Studios.
Right. It chronicles his escapades and his experiences becoming a new studio head. So we have 3 texts about industry, Hollywood, and intrigue, and all of the things that go with filmmaking, and the drama behind the drama.
The drama behind the drama. And certainly what we can say, I think pretty safely, is that Hollywood loves talking about itself.
Absolutely.
It loves making media about itself. And very often this media is rewarded with a great deal of love, right? The Studio was the Emmy winner for Best Comedy, which surprised a lot of people.
Including me.
Including you. And again, over our beloved Hacks.
And Above Severance.
And Above Severance, yes. So let's start talking about Jay Kelly, something that in some way I think we're going to slightly disagree about Jay Kelly. So directed by Noah Baumbach, who has done many, many films.
Right.
Husband or partner of Greta Gerwig of Barbie fame. And starring George Clooney pretty much as a George Clooney-esque character. A major movie star, sort of in his early 60s, perhaps nearing the end of his career.
Right.
And a trip that he takes with his entourage to receive an award in Italy. And all of the family dynamics and professional dynamics he goes through on that trip.
Right. And although he does go to, this is a critical point, although he does go to be honored, the main motivation behind him going is to spend more time with his daughter, who has just graduated from high school, who he doesn't feel like he spent enough time with her, and wants to, in a kind of real rushed and determined way, spend time with her in Europe before she goes off to college. So the idea is that he'll get this award, but he's also going to try to spend time with his daughter, who kind of wants nothing to do with him.
And to do her own thing with her friends.
And she wants to be 18 and backpack around Europe and do her thing. Disconnected to being the daughter of Jay Kelly.
Yes. And this is one of his 2 daughters.
Right.
And we're told that he has a very difficult relationship with his older daughter.
Right.
Because of his inattention when she was growing up, that he was not the best father. And so with this younger daughter, this is an opportunity to maybe develop some closeness that he doesn't have with the older one.
And in addition, he also has a disconnected relationship or troubled relationship with his own father, who does eventually come to this tribute, but
almost
is there
immediately.
very shortly and makes all kinds of points about how he could really care less that his son was a movie star and wishes he just kind of drove a tractor the way that he had, and is the main theme here is that Jay Kelly is not in the family way.
Yes, that he is very disconnected to his family. He is not married. Again, the difficult relationship with the daughters and the father. And what we also see over the course of the film is that this giant entourage basically falls away over the course of the film, and he is left only with Adam Sandler's character, his agent or manager.
His manager, Ron, who himself has a family that he is in contact with the entire time that he is on the trip, but he is pulled between his loyalty to his client Jay and then the different needs of his daughter and son and wife who are back in the States, who are asking him all kinds of questions, who need him for different things, and his own consciousness about how much time he's spending with his family and whether it's worth it. So one of the major themes that's so interesting to me about this film is the conflict between the talent and the entourage and the ways in which the talent sees the entourage maybe as employees and the entourage see themselves as friends, and the question of where the loyalties lie, and at the end of the day, will the talent disappoint you, or will the talent behave in ways that fulfill your expectations? And there's all kinds of things that happen, and clearly Adam Sandler is the sort of MVP in terms of securing roles for Jay Kelly and managing his career and going into different spaces to be with directors or writers or secure him as famous as he is, right? And and one thing that's I think important to point out, and actually Jim and I talked about this before, is that Jay Kelly is more famous than George Clooney.
Yes.
Jay Kelly is more like Leonardo DiCaprio, or his career in terms of the prestige of his films, the following he has, the longevity of the career. He is like a Taylor Swift almost. I mean, in terms of how famous he is. And it's not that George Clooney isn't famous. We all know who he is. But George Clooney himself hasn't had the prestige films that some of his counterparts have.
Oh, see, I would actually disagree with that. In that I think that we are supposed to have a sense, certainly from the retrospective that we see is George Clooney's film, and so we do see something like Syriana, right? And so I think we are supposed to think, right, that Jay has that degree of diversity, right? Again, sort of the action films, the prestige films, but thinking about, I don't know, I'm not sure I would agree that George Clooney hasn't had that. I'm not understanding what you're saying.
No, I think George Clooney's had a lot of stinkers, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, when you think about like a Harrison Ford, okay, if we're thinking about people who have worked with De Niro, I wouldn't put George Clooney with those folks.
Interesting.
And I think in large part because he was a television actor for such a long time, he entered his film career, he was about 40 when he first started making films, and although he's had some good films, he doesn't have as many canonical films, and he's also famous for a lot of other things. He's famous for his philanthropy, he's famous for his politics, he's got the Lake Como compound, he's married to Amal, he's famous for other things, but in terms of his film career and in terms of being, he's not Brad Pitt, which is interesting because he's with Brad Pitt in the Ocean's films. But he's and I'm not saying he's not very, very famous, but I actually don't think that this is George Clooney playing George Clooney. I think this is George Clooney playing what he wishes were George Clooney. And that's just my hot take.
Interesting. I mean, I guess I always think of Clooney primarily as working with Steven Soderbergh and working with the Coen brothers. Right. And so certainly in terms of prestige directors. Right. And I think he's probably worked, I mean, this is interesting, we could go through this, but I don't think of Harrison Ford, right, as someone who works with prestige directors.
Oh my god. Yes, but okay, so
right. And I guess that's what I'm thinking, right? So because Clooney, obviously, he did that thing, right? Again, he did the Soderbergh thing, he did the Coen brothers thing, and obviously, I mean, then he made romantic comedies or whatever, and but I guess, I don't know, that's so interesting to think about.
I guess if you ask person on the street, name a George Clooney film, right, they might have trouble coming up with one, okay? If you said, name a Harrison Ford film, everyone would say Raiders, Star Wars, et cetera, et cetera. And again,
but those are popular films and not prestige films.
Correct.
Okay, I think I'm getting lost about what the argument is.
Again,
here.
I'm thinking the sort of Tom Cruise version.
Yeah.
Right? Tom Cruise, who everywhere he goes, everyone knows who he is. People are screaming at that. And that is not George Clooney.
Okay.
And that's the distinction I'm making.
Okay. Well, then the interesting thing is, because I would say, and I mean, I don't think he's just playing George Clooney. I mean, I definitely agree with you about that. Although it is so fantastic to see that retrospective.
Yes.
It's really so interesting. Yes. But I think I would argue that George Clooney is playing the character that he's glad he is not. Right.
And that could be, yes.
In the sense that, right, we are told one part of it I liked, even though, in some ways it was kind of pedestrian, is when he says to his daughter, like, I was chasing something at the beginning. Right. And I never stopped chasing it.
Right.
Because I thought that if I did stop, it would all go away.
Right.
And I'm sure, obviously people in lots of professions believe that. But what's interesting about that, of course, is that since Clooney himself, right, married at a fairly late age, right, had children at a very late age, you really then can see Jay Kelly as that's the person who did it wrong. Right. But then in the film, we also have the Patrick Wilson character, right, who's supposed to be a very successful actor himself, but is surrounded by all of these people, right? The Isla Fisher wife and all of these, the kids
and family. And Adam Sandler says, because Adam Sandler also manages the Patrick Wilson character, says, look, I arranged for him to be with his family on the weekends, and he took those opportunities, and you didn't.
You did not. You could have, and you chose not to, for whatever reason. And so we certainly are supposed to think that Jay is not quite a manipulator, but he takes advantage. We have that fantastic sort of Billy Crudup's character.
Yes.
And who's so bitter, who turns out to be having been angry for so many years. And the idea that the Jay Kelly has always been an opportunist, right, in terms of his career. And so I think, I have to ask you, though. I just got myself an ask. Okay. So you said you loved it.
I did love it.
So what did you love about it?
I loved it. Okay, so I know you did not see Marriage Story. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
And that will never happen. I will never watch Marriage Story.
I know.
Anyway.
And I love Marriage Story.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I love Marriage Story and I love this. And I love them for similar reasons.
Oh, okay.
Even though they were different films. But one thing that Noah B. is really wonderful at is the intimacy of family. And what I loved about this film, and when I say love, also realize that despite the explanation in the beginning about why I love movies, most movies now are crap.
I agree.
Okay, so when I see a film made by a director that I admire, making a thoughtful, interesting, creative, beautifully filmed, and well acted film, I am already like box checked. But what I loved about it, and a lot of it had to do, it hit a lot of spots for me in terms of personal stuff and family and that. But I loved that it was a family story wrapped in a genre of kind of industry. It really is about his either lack of relationships with his own family or his kind of fractured relationships with his chosen family, and that it really unpacks why those relationships don't work. And in the end, when he, again, that great reel with the George Clooney movies, and you see him so satisfied and seeing the audience, and you realize his family or whoever his people are just a bunch of strangers, right? The people on the train, and that's true for a lot of famous folks, right? When we talked about this long ago when we did our series on the biographies and it was true for Sophie Tucker too, right? but the idea that Noah B has this really amazing way of capturing the intimacy of family, that's why I loved it.
Oh, interesting.
And I felt like it told a story about some very nuanced human interactions and understandings and misunderstandings through a vehicle of an industry film, which really wasn't about the industry at all. As much as it was about, sure, some of the tropes, right? The sacrifices you make for fame, and some of the really fantastic scenes with George Clooney on that train, encountering like regular
Fans,
people, and just like some lady like eating an apple, and her just being it's like, when was the last time I saw like a regular person eating an apple? Things like that. Which again, I agree are pedestrian, but I think Noah B has a way of elevating them and making them meaningful. And for me, like that, there's a great scene when Clooney is with his daughter and her boyfriend on that train, and you can sense the discomfort. And the boyfriend is enamored, right, because he's with Jay Kelly, but the daughter is humiliated, and the daughter just wants him to go away because she just wants to make out with her boyfriend on a train. And then there's also the added layer of Jay Kelly not really even being able to ask his daughter the questions that are sensitive or meaningful, or he can't keep his attention on her. So there's a lot there, and again, I just appreciate the way that the director is able to invite us into the kind of interpersonal dynamics without losing those stories in the larger narrative of sort of like Hollywood is so great, or Hollywood is so fucked up, one or the other, that's not really destroying the integrity of the family dynamics.
I run really cold with him, with Noah Baumbach, and I do think his most successful film is The Squid and the Whale, right, which is doing exactly that in terms of family dynamics. But I think one of the things that you said, that's a reason why I wasn't super, I thought it was fine, but one of the reasons why I wasn't super crazy about it is that we are simply presented with a workaholic, right? He could have been a corporate person, he could have been a lawyer, he could have been an athlete, right? And so fundamentally, when we strip everything down, we have a man who has a bad relationship with his two daughters because he worked too much when they were young. And in effect, now he is isolated. Again, he doesn't have a wife, bad relationship with his father. And so I think what I would say is that appreciating that the strength is those family dynamics, I actually don't understand why Jay Kelly needs to be an incredibly famous actor. Now, obviously, one can say, well, it's because he has a natural found family in an entourage that a celebrity like him needs. But again, I think that could have been done a million different ways. Again, an athlete with his agent, right? Like Jerry Maguire.
Sure.
An athlete with a team, right? All of these different things. And so I think when I kind of got down to it, I perhaps expected more layering, more depth in terms of what it actually means to be involved in this industry. And I will say the other thing about it is to me, it is a pastiche. It's a pastiche of Bergman's. It's actually more, it's a takeoff on Ingmar Bergman's Wild Strawberries. So Wild Strawberries, an elderly professor who is going to be given a major prize. He travels with his sister, with his daughter-in-law. They pick up people, and it's the exact same thing. We have a road trip. Right. I'm going to get the award, and along the way, I'm going to revisit episodes from my past that I am going to re-experience. Right. We're going to see the moments in the past. I'm going to realize I have a bad relationship with my mother. I have a bad relationship with my only son. My wife died, and I had a terrible marriage with her. And so to me, that is the template that Baumbach is using. Like, I think consciously that it becomes a remake of Wild Strawberries. But then we do then have this thing at the end, and forgive me, but I have to mention Sullivan's Travels. Okay. Because that scene where Clooney is looking around, right. That's a ripoff of the famous scene in Sullivan's Travels where Joel McCrea, right, is sitting around and he's like, people just want to be entertained, right? Exactly what you said before. Right. Poor people in prison, right? They want this kind of relaxation from their regular lives. And so it was so weird to me where I was like, okay, he's making a reference. Baumbach is making a reference to these other films, but I still didn't kind of get, like, why does it have to be that he's a famous actor? Well, unless, again, this was part of the appeal for Clooney, right? To say, I'm going to try to work out.
Yeah, and I think that I hear what you're saying. I think the early scenes with Billy Crudup, where he's like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to be famous. I'm going to read these monologues. This is my thing. And then when he goes in accidentally and reads and then it becomes a kind of addiction, right? Or as you say, like he starts out almost accidentally, right, with this successful film with this director, and then one thing leads to another, and then he has this relationship that we don't really see, but with Bono's daughter, right?
Eve Houston,
right, and again, I did buy the actor part of it. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered you. Although, again, I think that for me, the other thing that really strengthened the film, I mean, I think Adam Sandler is so good. I
agree. Yeah, he's the best part of it.
And he really is. He's so terrific. And it's interesting, again, I was also discussing this earlier with Jim, and Adam Sandler, of course, himself has a huge career, and more people on the street probably can name an Adam Sandler movie than a George Clooney movie.
Yes.
Okay, so the idea that Adam Sandler settles into this managerial role, this entourage role, and really shows a kind of vulnerability and really shows this interesting relationship to the talent is so fascinating. And I loved him in this movie. I love seeing Adam Sandler in dramatic roles, and I do think the movie would have been much weaker without Larder and without Adam Sandler.
Yeah, I didn't really see why they needed that plot line.
And I mean, I just think that they were really terrific.
Yeah,
I don't know why they had to be together, but I'm saying like they're to see all the people around him and also. Again, the people he meets on the way, maybe not so much, but certainly Sandler, who is really central to the movie.
Yes.
Is so terrific again, and I think adds so much meaning to what it means to be famous and what it also means to not be famous, right? But not get the credit, but contribute to the fame is such
which of course is in the studio, right?
Right.
So much
so,
point of
so important.
This is the main thread
and
of the studio.
Of course, the Golden Globes episode, is all about that. And it's an interesting question in terms of all these people who support other people and either don't receive the credit or get blown off or get discarded or their contributions aren't recognized. And I think that's Adam Sandler just does an amazing job conveying that. And so,
but of course, we also have the note. Someone says that it might be the Isla Fisher character who says, well, of course, someone like Adam Sandler is benefiting financially, right? That it's not just that the Clooney character is sort of confusing friendship or family with business associates or employees, but that also from Adam Sandler's side. But then you have that beautiful, beautiful moment where they're holding hands, with this incredibly moving scene.
When they put the makeup on.
Yes, that was great. The Sharpie on the eyebrows.
I love the Sharpie on the eyebrows. For me, again, my bar is real low, okay? And so when I see those really tender, amazing moments, that's what made me love the film.
Yeah.
And so, again, that combined with a lot of these big questions being asked, existential questions about being present or being absent or, making other choices. And I love the Patrick Wilson character. I thought that was a great little nugget planted in there. Yeah. It was unexpected in some ways to have it be Patrick Wilson, right? So that's probably why I loved it. And had Adam Sandler not been in it, I don't think I would have loved it. Yeah. But there were so many fantastic scenes with the two of them. And they're not two people you think of together.
No, never. Never in a million years. Well, and the last thing I'll say about it is that I did think what was very touching about it, in some ways it's kind of like watching Wild Strawberries, is that Clooney looks so physically fragile in this film.
Yeah, he does. He does.
He looks like a man at the end of his career.
He does.
And of course, just thinking about George Clooney. And again, seeing that fantastic montage, right? And I just
and the picture of him
and the
at
picture
the
of him.
party.
I mean, remarkable. I mean, so beautiful.
He is a gorgeous man.
So beautiful. And so I thought that really was like a moment of tenderness too. Consistently just see him look fragile, right? And to look like an aged actor. So let's move on a little bit and talk about, let's see, we were going to talk about the player and the studio.
Right, but we need to talk about the player first.
We do. And so the player was an absolute sort of dynamic hit, and really controversial in some ways when it first came out, 1989, perhaps, 88?
Okay.
Because it was so biting about Hollywood, so cynical.
Right.
And I hate to sound negative, but directed by Robert Altman, who I think is probably the single most overrated American director.
1992.
Thank you, 1992. The single most overrated director in American film history. I hate to say it. But The Player is, in so many ways, it's so engaging. It's so fascinating. One of the early starring roles of Tim Robbins.
Right, who is wonderful.
Wonderful, playing a venal, evil Hollywood studio executive who becomes a murderer. Not to spoil it too much. No. But so we have a lot of cameos by real actors
playing them. Well, we have a lot of actors, people playing themselves and playing other characters. Yes. But yes, there are a lot of the Angelica Houstons, the Burt Reynolds, the Andie MacDowell is not herself, right?
She is herself.
She is herself?
She is herself.
Okay.
Yes.
I couldn't remember at that point whether she had enough fame to be herself.
I believe she is herself. And so he ends up being a murderer. He ends up killing a writer that he believes is stalking him, and he also ends up having a relationship with the writer's lover, played by Greta Scacchi, looking very beautiful in this film. And so it is about the difference between certainly art and commerce. We have the issue here of the studio that wants the blockbuster with the happy ending.
Right.
And the writers who are pursuing art. Again, the studio executive is someone pitched between these things.
Right.
And basically the entire film is about whether Griffin Mill, the studio executive, whether he has a soul or not.
Right.
And whether he's going to lose it, if he does have one.
Right. And there's so many interesting things that go into The Player. I mean, there's the whodunit of who is sending Griffin all of these
stalkery notes,
postcards and faxes and things like that, and we really never find out. But there's also questions about him, although he is a really disgusting human being. The question of, well, can he really, he does murder somebody, but then, he murders somebody, and how is he going to get away with it? And there are these wonderful performances by Whoopi Goldberg and Lyle Lovett.
Oh, yeah, as the detectives.
Who are so sort of nonchalant in their policing of him, which I think is really, really great. And again, along the way, we see all kinds of pitches and failed pitches and people who are wanting to make it in the industry.
And people on their way down.
And the person who Griffin Mill kills had this experience in Tokyo as a student and wanted to make a film about that and wrote a film about that, and he sort of casually blows him off and says, well, I just didn't like it and I don't think it was compelling and it doesn't have the sex. And the fun, there are these components that every film has to have, or several of these components need to be present for one of what they say are 12 films a year that get greenlit. And his film didn't have them. But it also, again, this is biting satire on how just kind of arbitrary choices are, how you can have a sad movie like Terms of Endearment, but in the end everyone needs a happy ending. And people kind of come in and out, and talent is ingratiated, and then you have the Peter Gallagher character who wants to take over, or does take over, Tim Robbins's job. But the industry is very volatile, and players, right? We can think of players as being pushed around like pawns by these various studio heads who themselves are vulnerable, right? As we'll talk about more with the studio. But the whole thing is a kind of house of cards waiting to collapse.
And I think one of the things that's really interesting about it is that we can compare it to something like The Talented Mr. Ripley, where I say, do we ever root for Griffin Mill? Because he's so awful.
He is awful.
And we're not really given the sense that he's an idealist in terms of the art, right? In terms of film history, in terms of film itself. And so we don't want, this is what I think is so great about the player. We don't want him to succeed, right? We read him in a lot of ways as a villain, but, sorry, go ahead.
No. The one thing I would say, the only time where I'm rooting for him, only because is when he sees the police are at the airport and he says, let's go to the desert. And the reason I want them to go to the desert is because I want to see them together. Not because I want him to get away with the crime, but because obviously they haven't really had a full-on, date, and they haven't had sex yet, that sort of thing. And you want to see what that looks like. So I really was at that moment saying, and again, I hadn't seen the movie in a while, and I was thinking, please, police, don't arrest him right now. Let him go to the desert. Let him go to the hot springs. And I did remember, actually, there was that great, fantastic hot spring scene where they're in the mud baths next to each other, and he's pick up the phone, and it's just great. So I was kind of waiting. In some ways, it was like retroactive. Like I didn't want him to get arrested because I wanted to see him in the hot springs.
And we do.
And we do.
But of course, this is the great thing about the player is that the film has to have a happy ending.
Yes.
As we're told. And so the film gives us a happy ending in the sense that someone who is a murderer and pretty venal, and also in effect is kind of cheating on his existing girlfriend, kind of, sort of, right? Their situationship or whatever. Yeah. Whatever, when he starts doing whatever with Greta Scacchi. And so we end up having the happy ending that we're kind of angry that we have. And this, of course, is, I think, so fantastic about the player.
It is.
And then of course, all becomes incredibly meta.
Yes.
That
art imitates life, and then three times. Because the Bruce Willis, Julia Roberts movie ends, Traffic Was a Bitch. And then, of course, Griffin Mill, Traffic Was a Bitch. And then we realize we're watching the player. We're watching the movie that was pitched to him by the writer that was stalking him.
Yes. Which is called, as we're told,
the player.
The player. And so I think that's, in some ways, it's such a perfect kind of, late 80s, early 90s movie, right? So cynical, so bitter, so interested in some ways in class, not in terms of really socioeconomic class, but kind of professional class.
Absolutely.
Right? And all of those people, again, who are going up and going down.
And the Gina Gershon character and the sort of sycophants and the people that are in these restaurants that are sort of moving around, and different celebrities who are coming and going, but, and you see John Cusack and, but
everyone's at their party.
But you also see that, again, that the way in which a Griffin Mill sucks up to these celebrities. And again, we can talk about that in the studio, of course, but the ways in which they are beholden to them at the same time that they make fun of them. And the same way that everyone's like, well, we can't have a Bruce Willis in this movie because we're going to have, the talent. What is it? The talent speaks for itself. Or no names, only talent, or whatever.
No names. No. And of course, I love Richard E. Grant as one of the writers. Okay, that we have, that it's not just the executives, right? And this, of course, is one of the other great little details in the player, that the writers themselves, right, who are supposed to be so pure, right, so committed to the art, and the writers themselves end up just being willing to do anything, anything for the paycheck and the credit and having the movie made. But it is also, I think, watching that in some ways, I'm not going to say I feel guilty, but the satisfaction, watching the movie in the 1980s and early 1990s, we wanted to have that sort of sassy, line.
Yes.
Right? That was so satisfying. It's still satisfying in a lot of ways.
It is.
But to be accused of enjoying it, which the player does, I think that puts us in a really interesting position in terms of viewers who do like kind of popcorn films, right? Big entertainment. And especially, of course, that it was Bruce Willis at the time. And that was the peak Bruce Willis fame.
Right.
Absolutely. And so I think it's really interesting how we're positioned as viewers and enjoyers of film in the player. I think nobody is safe in that film, which I think is so interesting.
It is. And I think the other thing that I like about the player, just thinking about locale and thinking about music and things like that, is it is a really interesting job of not kind of featuring Tim Robbins as this sort of ultra wealthy Hollywood mansion, by the pool. It doesn't show that world. He's as disgusting as he is, ethically, morally, all of that. And we see, he has a Range Rover, but we don't see him as the sort of, although Jeremy Piven is in it, but he's not Ari Gold.
Yes.
And that's what's so interesting to me, is that, again, the world of Ari Gold, which is captured, again, so brilliantly in Entourage, is not captured in The Player. And it isn't, again, as much as it is about commercialism, it isn't about personal material gain.
Yes, agreed.
And
even though he does have a fantastic car.
He does. Yes. He does.
But it's not, but I hear, I know exactly what I'm saying.
I mean, Ari Gold is all about the Benjamins, and we see his fantastic mansion, and we see his tennis club, and we see the world of Ari Gold, which is beyond ostentatious, okay? And this is a very different, and not to say that Tim Robbins doesn't have those things. We just don't see it.
We don't see it. It's not dwelt upon.
No.
Okay, but I think I have to say, and in part this is why I don't like Robert Altman. I mean, I absolutely despise Shortcuts, which was the film that he followed up The Player with. And I'm the only person I think in the world who thought Nashville was terrible. But I hate to bring up Sullivan's Travels again. Again, so Sullivan's Travels, again, a Preston Sturges film, 1941. And of course, the whole point, as we said a few minutes ago, the whole point of Sullivan's Travels is the director who wants to make a kind of very socially responsible, sort of heavy film about the quote-unquote working man, that he ends up realizing by the end of Sullivan's Travels that entertainment is so valuable in itself, right? That what the working man wants is not the film about his own socioeconomic condition, but he wants something where he can laugh.
Sure.
And what is so interesting is that Robert Altman then gives us a film that despises audiences for wanting that. And I think that I think comments upon Robert Altman. It certainly comments upon that generation that Robert Altman belonged to, right? As directors in the late 1960s and early 1970s when Altman became famous. But I think that that's the juxtaposition of those two things. I'm kind of disconcerted by it. Because, again, Sullivan's Travels is making a fantastic case for entertainment.
Right.
And The Player, in a lot of ways,
is not.
Despises entertainment.
Right, despises it.
And it is really hard to understand what film is good art, according to The Player. But in a sense, it's not even interested in that question at all. Well, because it's given up on Hollywood.
Well,
the film has given up on
bicycle thief.
Ah, yes, of course. The bicycle. How could I forget The Bicycle Thief?
Because, again, that's where our writer is murdered after seeing it. That's the purity.
The purity of Italian post-war cinema.
Yes.
No, thank you for reminding me of that.
Yes. So, which we can never capture again, and even Tim Robbins says, "Well, we'll do it pure, right?" But we know that Tim Robbins is never going to remake The Bicycle Thief.
It is never going to happen, but that's probably a good thing anyway.
It is.
So, well, actually, now let's start talking about the studio, because this is, of course, a key issue in the studio, the relationship between art and commerce, as well as that question of credit that came up a few minutes ago. And as we've discussed, it is not accidental that the head of the entire company in the studio is named Griffin Mill. I believe that Seth Rogen and his partner, his writing partner, were going for continuity with the Player universe. Who knows?
Yes.
I think it would have been fantastic if Tim Robbins were playing the role of Griffin Mill. It is Bryan Cranston.
Yes.
But we do have in this series, which is super enjoyable, we have a brand new studio head, and he is doing a lot of awkward things. He's coming into this continental studio universe, which is known for making action movies, MK Ultra series. Ultra
completely vapid, just popcorn
big
flicks, big entertainment, no sort of artistic
prestige films, no art house.
And the Seth Rogen character very much sees himself, at least in the beginning, as maybe being able to insert some kind of art or artistic values into this new studio, which he quickly learns is not possible. And that he very much is someone who is a fan of cinema. Yes.
That he takes film very, very seriously. Yes. He is a fan. He's the whole movie magic. And he wants to be understood as someone who is genuinely contributing to the art. Whether that's the MK Ultra series or the vampire film.
All art.
Yes.
It's all art to him, and it doesn't really matter what whether you're making Citizen Kane or whether you're making the MK Ultra or whatever, however many Fast and the Furious 8 or Wink, the sequel to Smile. I mean, so the great thing,
the Zoe Kravitz vampire film.
The great thing about the studio, and I didn't love it by any means, and I thought it was really uneven. And
I agree with that.
there were some episodes that I thought were terrific, and some episodes that I could have probably done without.
Yeah.
And I think the end was kind of ridiculous. The very end.
Yes. Yes.
Again, I loved the Golden Globe episode, but I sort of wish it had ended there. Yes.
I actually thought that it had until I realized there were a couple more episodes. Yeah. Because it's a great place to finish. That is a great place to finish with him in the limo by himself.
Yes, it's a great place, and again, very Clooney.
Yes,
right,
and very Clooney.
But the great things about the studio are all of these really funny moments that question kind of contemporary popular culture, that utilize current directors and actors and the zeitgeist and a lot of the issues that are going on, and that, again, there's so many people that participated in this with Rogan who lent their person and their time, and so there's some episodes where you really get a sense of, this could have happened, right? I mean, they're going to make the Kool-Aid movie, and it sounds ridiculous when you first hear it, and they're like, you know what? Right, they made Barbie. Why wouldn't they're going to make the Polly Pocket movie, right? Yeah. Why wouldn't they make the Kool-Aid movie? And so, and again, I was very relieved to see when I was finished, or at least in the second episode, that the whole series wasn't about the making of the Kool-Aid movie.
Yes, although it does reappear. It does reappear occasionally. And, yes. And it's on the docket.
That great episode about diversity for the Kool-Aid movie is a brilliant episode. Brilliant episode. And I definitely one of my favorites of the series, and hilarious, and the conversations they're having about what it would mean to have the Kool-Aid man as being a black man, and then whether he needs to be married to a black woman. I mean, again, you can see those conversations happening, and it's really, really smart. But the nice thing about the series too is that it moves through a lot of different elements of kind of Hollywood movie making, so every episode isn't the same. And it captures, again, I love the episode where Quinn, the what is she, assistant VP or
brand new exec
is able to kind of outwit the other character, who's Sal Saperstein, right? Who's a much higher creative director for all kinds of reasons, and really use like Me Too and contemporary.
That episode really bothered me.
I really liked it, in part because I'll be honest. I mean, some of the Rogan stuff in the beginning of the series he just kind of annoyed me. So I was happy to see an episode where he wasn't there as much.
He was not a focus.
And I really liked her, and I really liked what was going on with the two of them. And again, a totally satirical way. And again, there were some episodes where I just wanted less of him, less of Rogan.
Well, and it's in some ways what is so strange about it, especially after seeing The Player, is that, of course, the basic point is that he's hapless. Right. That he's a klutz. He has imposter syndrome. He doesn't understand why he is really the head of the studio, even though he's worked for this. Right. And we're told that he begins as a production assistant, works his way up. But that we have all of these episodes, these moments where he has no commitment to principle. Right. He's so nervous. He's anxious about his own choices. And so, in a sense, we very much do have a Seth Rogen, he should be in a t-shirt smoking pot kind of character.
We do.
Who now is the head of a major movie studio.
We do.
And it's so when we have the Golden Globes moment where he's in the bathroom with Ted Sarandos playing himself on Netflix. And of course, you look at Ted Sarandos, who's probably not too much older than Seth Rogen. And it's very much the case, right, that Seth Rogen's character is supposed to be more just immature and uncertain, and then to have this actual executive who's like, yes, of course I put it in the contract that they have to thank me.
I'm a bean counter.
I'm a bean counter. That's what I am. I'm not the artist. And so I thought that all of that uncertainty, the Seth Rogen character, definitely, we have too much of it, a lot, right? That he is not committed. He's kind of buffeted by these different winds. So, and he wants to be thanked, as we learned at the Golden Globe episode.
He does want to be thanked. And again, the thing, I guess part of me wished he had cast someone else in his own role.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because, again, Seth Rogen's Smoking Pot, that's the Seth Rogen I love. The knocked up Seth Rogen, that's the one I love.
A fuck up.
Fuck up, and just, and you know, with the out with Jonah Hill, and, you know, all that. And so I don't really want to see him in the Griffin Mill role. Yeah. And it's a stretch. And I think, although, again, the episode that we talked about with the doctor, the oncologist, which is so funny, and there you see pot smoking Seth Rogen come out, because again, when he's defending all movies are art, you know, you go into a hospital room and what's on the wall, a screen with a movie on it, right? That's that Seth Rogen. That's a Seth Rogen, again, going back to Knocked Up, where he could clock, you know, who's naked. I love that Seth Rogen. And I felt like that Seth Rogen came out much more in that episode.
I agree.
And in some of the other episodes, it feels like he's playing dress up.
Yes, I definitely, especially with the phone calls from his mother.
Yes.
Right, and again, that he is, in effect, a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But let's actually talk about the pediatric oncologist episode for a minute. Because this episode gets to the heart of what it means to be a movie maker, what it means to love film, what it means to love popular culture.
Right.
And I think both of us probably felt this episode very keenly.
I did.
Surrounded as we are by academics who are often very dismissive and hostile to and patronizing to television, popular culture. And
especially non-prestige popular culture.
And so we have Seth Rogen's character is dating a pediatric oncologist. He goes to a benefit where he meets other doctors, and every single one of them is brutally dismissive of his work as a studio head, which he then tries to defend.
Well, they're also, I mean, there's that wonderful scene where they're juxtaposing her on the phone with her pediatric cancer.
Is the child going to die?
Yeah, right. Pediatric trials for new cancer drug, and he's talking about a Johnny Knoxville film.
With diarrhea.
With a diarrhea, right. And that's really terrific. And the question of whether or not saving children with cancer is as important as running a studio. And he is relentless. He
wants them to admit it.
Yeah. And of course they won't. And it's not just that they won't, but that they also really put down the art in general, the genre, the movies, like it's not worth anything. It would be nothing. Nobody would be for the worse if it didn't exist. Sure, I'll watch The Bear.
And this of course is the perfect exchange. That as time goes on, they become more unapologetic about making fun of him and making fun of his work, and it absolutely is so absolutely perfect.
It is so spot on.
Did you see The Bear?
Did you see The Bear?
That The Bear now is the totem for the people who are, I don't watch TV.
Right.
I don't watch TV, but I watch The Bear.
Right.
And I thought that I absolutely loved that. And we really do. Again, I hate to say it again, but we have exactly that Sullivan's Travels moment where this is the benefit, this is the gift that you are giving to, this is the argument, that he is trying to make.
Right.
You are giving a gift to humanity.
Right.
To entertain them. To take their minds off their troubles or lead them to see beautiful images.
Which, of course,
or great
George
acting.
Clooney realizes at the end of his movie.
Yes.
Right? That this is the gift that he gave.
This is the gift. And all of these people that you will never know, who are not related to you, not even, again, your chosen family, but that you are able to put something out there into the world that gives other human beings, millions of human beings, happiness.
Right.
But it is never the case that in the studio, in this episode of The Pediatric Oncologist, they will not admit this.
No.
They will not, even after he says, if they go into a hospital room, there's the screen.
But interestingly, again, and they didn't discuss this as much, and Seth Rogen didn't say it, but they're all bidding on this golf trip, to Ireland with this golf pro.
Yeah.
And they are fine to say that golf and the experience with the golf pro is worthy and is as valid, certainly valid enough to bid, I don't know,
$10,000
or more. I mean, Seth Rogen bid $200,000 on that golf trip. but that they, for some reason, golf is a kind of art that is acceptable, whereas the kind of movies that Seth Rogen makes are not.
Are a waste of time, waste of money. And I have that moment where they're doing the betting at the auction on the golf trip, I think is so incredibly satisfying.
It is.
Because you want him to
and you know he's going to.
And you know he's going to. And just this sort of excitement where... And then they have the gall to say, well, give us the trip. And actually, the pediatric oncologist that he's dating, and she says, well, give them the trip. And I was like, well, fuck off. Why should I
give him the trip?
Again, this is money that he has made making these films that you disparage. And I don't know, it was so viscerally satisfying
it was.
when he did that.
Well, especially because in the earlier scene where he's with her before they go to the benefit or gala or whatever, and she admits she hasn't seen like anything. She hasn't seen anything. She hasn't seen even like The Wizard of Oz. Okay, nothing. This woman has seen no movies. And he's like, well, we'll keep adding it to the list. And he's very patient with her. And he doesn't say, well, you're just some, asshole.
You're the Philistine who doesn't know anything about The Wizard of Oz.
Because you've never heard of, I don't know, again.
Star Wars or whatever.
Right. She hasn't seen...
Or even The Bicycle Thief.
Right.
She has never even seen The Bicycle Thief.
She's not seen anything.
She's not seen Bergman films. She didn't see Wild Strawberries.
Right. This woman just is... film phobic, maybe.
Yes.
Who knows? But
has she seen The Bear?
Has she seen The Bear?
Why did The Bear become like...
I don't...
I
don't know. It's because
I don't watch TV, but
I watched The Bear. I watched
all those great needle drops in The Bear. All those great shots
Well,
of
to me, it's the combination of the Chicago, the kind of class poverty simulation, the racial diversity, the also because The Bear is itself a critique of food and art and taking the high road, or what happens when you sacrifice your family. Again, another thing, what happens when you sacrifice your family for high art. Okay.
Well, and of course,
which is so interesting. Again, which is so interesting that they're actually, and this is a very meta level, of course, but they're not talking about their critique of The Bear being similar to many of the arguments that Seth Rogen is making.
Yes.
Is that right?
Well, that's I don't know. I think I'm getting confused.
Well, I guess again, and this is to go off script from the studio, but if people like The Bear because it's quote real, authentic, gritty, and about the kinds of people you should be watching on TV and like representational issues and all of that kind of stuff. Right. It's also a series about someone who wants to do something and be the best in the world, really, at something that no one else is the best in the world at, or like 5 people can do. A dilettante, right? Yes. Somebody who wants to be a dilettante, who feels guilty about wanting to be a dilettante. And The Bear, again, not to suggest the doctors in the studio don't eat the food that's at The Bear, the restaurant, and they don't think that that's important, by the way, because I don't think any of those doctors would say we don't need restaurants.
Yes. But of course, that's the thing, it seems to me, that those doctors would actually gravitate to in The Bear is The Bear's sort of uber serious presentation of a $500 dinner as something that is serving humanity just like a hospital is. Right. Correct. And so, which of course is so ridiculous and so offensive in The Bear and so classist. Yes. But yes, one can see those doctors gravitating to that sort of, again, uber serious.
Right. But it's only because The Bear, and again, not to get into a whole Bear thing, but The Bear started as a gritty family place, and it came, and it's a pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
And again, as you say, poverty simulation.
It is.
Isn't it cute that the working classes are doing their thing
and working in a kitchen, and then went to culinary school and learned an actual skill.
But then also we're working at Per Se and French Laundry and all of these other things that are resonant.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, on the studio, I would say, again, it's not like I want to go back and watch it. I would watch another season if it came out.
Yeah, I would too.
But the unevenness of it at times bothered me. And I think, again, Rogan, I think he's a good writer. I think he's a good producer. I wish he had cast somebody else
I really do
just
agree with that.
fit more into that mold, had the look a little bit more of studio head. And I think there's obviously plenty of people out there that do it. I think the rest of, and the other thing is the Sal Saperstein character. Well, I liked the Gold Globe episode because it was so funny and also so like spot on in terms of these people just thanking this random guy. He also irritated me, and the relationship between the two of them didn't really feel like it had a whole lot of nuance to it. So again, it was, and the fact that the episodes also, many of them took on these different genres or twists, and there's a noir episode, and there's the episode with the one cut, right? That threw me a little bit because it took the focus off of the development on Rogan as a studio head and trying to come into this role as his own.
Because he's pretty static throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
And we don't see any kind of growth in his confidence or his persona. And obviously there's the kind of flip-flopping with the... I mean, it is very entertaining to see Martin Scorsese start to cry. Realizing that he is not, in fact, going to make his Jim Jones Kool-Aid film. But he is static, and he is this foil, right, that everyone else is working around. But nobody else is really developed either.
No.
And that's why certainly the Quinn character, I think, will be interesting. As much as I didn't like the episode where she was fighting against Sal, the idea of, okay, she's a young woman who is able to weaponize this identity and to see how she develops. And one thing I did like a lot about the studio, and this obviously had to happen, is the idea that you have sort of this old studio dragon like Patty, who's from kind of the Bob Evans era, who then has to deal with this kind of social media, like hyper sort of articulated marketing. And
that's very cool.
And and that juxtaposition was nice. But
I'd like to see more of her too. I
would as well.
That was that to me, the Rogan centric storytelling in some ways sidelined the more interesting characters. And again, I don't, the Quinn episode, it was just so nice to see someone else, to learn about somebody else's life, and to see what her motivations were, and then like, oh, well, there's this person who's been just kind of walking around with other people, taking notes for a few episodes, who doesn't even have that many lines, and now we kind of understand her.
And I love that moment at the end, and I think that moment at the end between the two of them is really fantastic.
It is.
Where she says, I need to learn, and he says, well, and you can learn from me, but you need to appreciate that I've been doing this for a long time. And they actually get to this point in the workplace that is this mutually respectful situation. And so I thought that was a great ending to that. I mean, I think the problem with the Seth Rogen stuff is that fundamentally it makes the series seem like Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I was just going to say, there's so much Curb in it.
The awkward, dorky, I'm in this situation, the cringy situation, right? It happens all the time in the studio. But what I do love about it, it's not just that defense of popular culture, right? which you and I need, right?
Of course we do.
So we have the defense of popular culture, but we have the defense of popular culture that is juxtaposed with a defense of unpopular culture. That you do. One of the things the studio that Continental in the show prides itself on, that Seth Rogen's character does pride himself on, right? And we see this at the very end of the season. They have a slate where it is the Sarah Polley art film, right? The big MK Ultra 13 or whatever. The Kool-Aid movie that's coming out.
Right.
And so I loved that idea that unlike The Player, which is so bitter, so cynical, that you do have this almost kind of warm sense that I feel like filmmaking in the studio, it hits the spot that I personally like the best.
Okay.
Right? Exactly. You know, again, the Matt Damon, right? You do one for you, one for them. And so I like that affirmation. Film has a history.
Yes.
Popular culture, popular film is worthwhile. Again, a la Sullivan's Travels and the Clooney film. But that also there's a room for something more quirky. And so, I liked that component of it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's trying to find its legs, and I think that there are some episodes that definitely are more successful than others, as I've said before, and some of it was just annoying for me because Seth Rogen just, again, felt like Larry David.
Yeah, he really does.
And
he really does.
It's like if Larry David ran a studio, as much as I love Larry David, as much as I love Curb, and as much as there's this again, even the episode with the pediatric oncologist, it felt like a Larry David episode.
It absolutely did.
I mean, you could imagine...
It was Palestinian chicken.
Yeah, and with Palestinian. You could imagine Larry David on a date.
Yeah,
what? A pediatric oncology?
Completely.
Oh,
yes.
What's that like?
Yes.
You could completely see Larry David on that date. And and just being himself.
And again, the clothes, when walking into the scene, right? The car's parked, and anyway,
all of it.
Greta Lee can't exit because, all of that.
Right. And he keeps walking in. I mean, he keeps walking in, and there's a distraction on the microphone, and there's
that was straight up Curb.
Yeah. So there are some parts of it, again, that also felt really derivative, and not necessarily in a bad way, because these are references that I really like. I don't know that they were intentional or not, but it did have.
That's a good question.
It did have that vibe, and so. But also so different than the player, of course, which does not have that vibe. Does not have that Yiddishkeit vibe.
And of course, we have the David Krumholtz character, who constantly is making the puns about them being Jewish, and is sort of over the top. The Zoe Kravitz agent that we see sort of in a couple of episodes. And where it's very much where Seth Rogen's character is like, I've had enough of this.
Yes.
So it is, I do like, again, that we have something that is affirming and not cynical. And, and it is interesting when and obviously there's so many more movies and TV shows having to do with Hollywood and filmmaking that we could talk about.
Many.
But that we do have, again, this sense of, again, not just juxtaposition of sort of popular culture and not popular culture, but also this sense of sort of who your friends are. And you mentioned before about the Sal Saperstein character. And obviously we talked about how this comes up with Clooney. When you are in this particular world of filmmaking, pop culture, media, and you have an entourage, what is that relationship between sort of celebrity and friendship?
But what's an interesting comparison is, so the Sal Saperstein who slept on Adam Scott's husband.
Yes.
And to compare that to Clooney and Billy Crudup,
exactly.
And to think about how those two just went sideways in terms of the possibilities of relationships. It's not that Saperstein and Adam Scott became besties and talked all the time, but obviously their relationship was a warm one, and Scott is grateful to him, and of course,
and
famously, thanks him in the speech, and then everyone else does too. Whereas the Clooney Crudup relationship ends
in a fist fight.
It's and many years later.
Yes,
but even at the time did not end amicably. Yes. And it's interesting to think of these people along the way who help you and are friends or your besties when you start out in the industry, right? And I'm thinking of that Charlie Sheen documentary.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he talks about all these people that came through and people that he was roommates with at different times, and this one and that one, and again Clooney was in there some of the time, right? But you think about all these different moments before people hit it big when they are just kind of itinerant and insecure, and they're just willing to do whatever, and then later reflect on that, and that Clooney has such a different recollection of it than an Adam Scott does.
That's a really good point. And that reminds me that just last week I read the very short memoirs by Andrew McCarthy called Brat, and I kind of wish I hadn't read it.
Well, did you see the documentary?
Yes, I did see the documentary. Okay. But it's exactly this, where you have a really young actor who is, spending his time sort of paying his dues. He's studying in New York. He's going to acting classes. Obviously he's meeting a young actor like Rob Lowe.
Sure.
And he makes the contrast between when they're making class, and Rob Lowe is already so professional. He knows what he wants. He's going to be a superstar. He's obviously incredibly handsome. And there's this strain consistently in the Andrew McCarthy memoirs, again, very short and very depressing, where he, in effect, you can see him. He is always going to be that Billy Crudup character in the Clooney film.
Right.
He's always going to be someone who's very, very talented at acting, but doesn't have this kind of killer instinct. He is awkward in situations. He keeps going to auditions, and you're kind of like, how did you end up in Pretty in Pink and everything else?
Right.
And so it's exactly that dynamic, sort of all of these directions that young actors can go, and all of the other skills that you need in terms of becoming a Hollywood celebrity and a superstar. right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew McCarthy, again, one more time, totally the Billy Crudup character. It would not surprise me if Andrew McCarthy had become a child therapist and then had a fist fight with Rob Lowe 30 years later.
What's another, I guess, one of the things that threw me off about the Billy Crudup character, having just finished the morning show, which is, of course, that it's the opposite on that show.
Yes.
He is the Seth, I mean, he's more than the Seth, well, I guess he's the Seth Rogen or, equivalent.
He's the Griffin Mill.
He's the Griffin Mill.
Yeah.
He's venal. He is completely without any kind of ethical compass. He's ruthless. He's really slick, and he's it's interesting to see him playing a kind of like lovable loser in the Clooney movie. I mean, it's really
and he was great.
Yes,
when he does the scene where he has to sort of cry on cue.
Yes, he is great.
Fantastic.
No, he's really great. But it's so crazy to see those two sort of industry pieces next to each other.
Yes.
Because
the failure and the superstar.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, and again, morning show, we haven't talked about that, but there's so many texts out there now, and always have been, about the industry. And of course, the industry loves the industry. And,
it does.
And we can think about all the awards and all the films and all the television shows that have gotten a lot of praise for celebrating the industry or critiquing the industry or old film stars or that sort of thing. So,
well, I was excited to see there were 2 restaurants in that season of the studio that I have gone to.
Oh, do tell.
The Smokehouse,
okay,
which they go to at the very beginning when they first meet the David Krumholtz character, and then Musso and Frank, which I went to just this past summer, which is where Sal takes his 2 daughters and they're
right. Oh, that's right.
So I was like, that was really exciting.
The scene at Musso and Frank also, again, like, that annoyed me. Okay? I mean, not because I don't know kids like that, okay? Not because, the kids. But, again, I wish that it gave me some insight into the Sal Saperstein character, and it just didn't.
It did not.
He just sat there and he just ate his food, and his daughters acted like whatever. Gen X or Gen Z people, and just.
But it was a Clooney-esque moment, though.
It was a Clooney-esque moment.
He's totally disassociated from his daughters, and
but he made an effort. I mean,
he makes an effort.
He did say, you can go, I'm going to take my daughters to lunch. They can get whatever they want. I'm going to ask them what's going on.
We'll spend time together and connect. And then, and of course the sense is also, they're just teenagers.
Sure.
They're spoiled teenagers. It's not that there's been years of neglect or something they're responding to.
No.
Oh, and of course we just have to say that was Riley Keough.
Right.
As
Riley
the oldest daughter. And I think she's great.
Although one thing, which may be my last point about the studio, which we haven't talked about, is the fact that Seth Rogen is alone.
Yes.
And then he tells his mother several times he cannot have a real relationship when he is a studio head.
He's married to the studio.
And he's married to the studio. And even though we see him dating the pediatric oncologist, and he has some, one night flings with whoever.
Makes out with Catherine Hahn's character.
But he's never going to pursue a real lasting relationship. He doesn't have any children. And so we get the same vibe that we do from the Clooney film.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not the regret.
Just that this is the reality.
Yeah.
Right. This is my commitment to the art that no one will acknowledge or thank me for.
And no baby on the way that we see at the end of The Player.
That is true. Excellent point. Maybe that'll be the second season of the studio. Perhaps.
Maybe we'll see the. Well, again, I still think the Tim Robbins cameo is a must.
Oh, I mean, I just.
And like, what is
It's dumbfounding that he's not Griffin Mill.
Doing? What is Tim Robbins doing?
Maybe he's just retired. Maybe we didn't notice that. Maybe he's retired and just hanging around.
Just throw him a bone. Like,
it'd be fantastic if he. I really do think Sal Saperstein is being styled on purpose like Griffin Mill. I believe that. That again, his clothes look a little bit more sort of like. Late 80s suit, the bigger suit and the hair.
The shoulder pads.
Yes, I think he is supposed to physically remind us of Griffin Mill in The Player.
Well,
I don't wrong, but
again, I don't know what Tim Robbins is up to, but it really feels like he needs to just walk across the studio lot and just
I would love that. Or Peter Gallagher.
We know
Larry Levine.
Okay, we know Peter Gallagher is still acting.
Yes, and still looking fantastic.
I would
absolutely love to see Larry Levine.
And we know that Jeremy Piven is still. And Gina. I mean, at this point, we can kind of go through the whole cast of the player and think about where some of those actors could come in, and I
think they'll be awesome.
And again, Zoe Kravitz has a fairly substantial role.
Yes,
I mean, it's almost alarming.
I had never actually heard her speak before watching the studio, because I don't think I've ever seen a movie that she's in.
She's in Big Little Lies.
See, I watched like one episode of that, and I just don't even remember. I never finished it.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, she's so exquisitely beautiful.
She is.
It's just,
I mean, how could she not?
Looking at her,
well, how could she not be?
Well, exactly.
I mean, with those parents, right? But yes,
Lenny Kravitz is, of course, single, as he's been single for like 10 years. And you know who else is single?
Who?
Nicole.
Ooh!
They could get back together again. Would that be fantastic if they got back together? Lenny Kravitz and Nicole. I would absolutely love that.
That would be amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, the persistence of Zoe Kravitz in the studio is interesting.
It is interesting
because she's in 2 full episodes and as herself, and she has like a real character.
Yeah.
Or whatever, she's herself. But
and I like that though, because it was very much. Right. Him as studio head saying, this is this sort of, gorgeous, talented young filmmaker, right, that I want to promote because I want to feel like I'm plugged in and I'm hip. And he's very concerned about this.
Yes.
Right? He wants to be cool. He wants to. So that actually made a lot of sense to me.
It did. No, it did. It did. I just not to say it again, but I'm like, oh, she's back.
She's back.
Zoe.
Yes.
She's back.
Yes, she is.
At an old school Hollywood, what was it? Old school Hollywood buffet?
It's like, where's the mountain of cocaine? Okay, well, do you have a book recommendation for this episode? You can think about it and then let me know.
Okay, I will. How about you?
I probably will recommend one of the books about Hollywood by Peter Biskind, but there's a couple in the play that I need to think about. I probably will suggest his book about 1970s cinema, but I need to think about that, so I will just post it.
Okay, let's post it on the site. Again, these were a lot of texts and also a lot of, I would say, last minute text, because this is some real research we are doing. The Baumbach film didn't come out till last night, and we both faithfully watched it. And again, I was pleased that I enjoyed it. And again, it wasn't a complete bomb and stayed up watching it. So I again, really, really did enjoy it. And George Clooney, look, also, he just is so classically handsome. Yeah, and he is.
He's
just,
a Cary Grant.
He's Cary Grant. He's so throwback. Yeah. And, one wonders, why wasn't he in LA Confidential?
Oh my God.
Right? He should have been the Russell Crowe character.
Oh, but I do like Russell Crowe a lot.
No, I do, but come on. I hear you. He looks like he should be in that movie.
I agree.
And it's
But he was still an ER doctor when that came out.
I know. And as I tried to explain to Jim earlier, and again, we had a sort of pre-pod before, we pre-gamed before the pod, is that because George Clooney is the same age as as Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and all those guys, he just didn't reach fame at the same time. So he was competing with people who were much, much more famous than him, which is probably why he didn't get into those roles. The other interesting question which we asked, not to drag this on, but why he didn't do another Tarantino film. Why wasn't he in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Good question.
Because he would have been interesting for that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Interesting question. I don't know. Something to think about.
I know. There's a lot of questions about Clooney, because you think of roles and you're like, wow, Clooney would have been great in that. And you're like, oh, interesting. Why wasn't he in that? And why is it so hard to think of a Clooney movie other than, say, we're the Coen brothers but again, person on the street, and you say, what was George Clooney in? They're going to say ER.
No, they're going to say Ocean's 11.
Yes.
They're going to say Ocean's 11.
One or the other. They're going to say, if you say movie, they're going to say the Ocean's movie, and then.
But it also depends upon age, right? Because no one younger than we are is going to say ER.
True. But if I said to my students, what has George Clooney been in? They may not even know the answer to that. Yeah. They may just say he's this guy out there who's like a Democratic Party fundraiser.
Yeah. And basically, Obama's friend and thought that Biden should not stay in the election.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be thinking about the retro fantasy of him starring in LA Confidential.
And it's a lot to think about.
I'm going to be thinking
and we may need to do, just for our listeners, part 2 of this segment, because there are so many terrific industry films, and
we didn't even talk about Sunset Boulevard.
No, and we haven't even gotten to the musicals. No, we haven't gotten to.
We need to
the musicals.
We need.
I mean, all the stage moms, all the theater behind the scenes of theater, chorus line. Yeah, we could do a whole pod on chorus line.
But right now, Lauren, you have a party to go to.
This is true. This is true. Where I will be one singular sensation.
Every little step she takes.
So we hope you all have a great whatever you're doing. And until next time.
Until next time.
Harpies out.
Across the land.